Hello all, welcome to NativeScript tutorials. As you have followed my previous tutorial, in this tutorial we are going to learn about application settings such as in application settings you can store some of your user data such as login credentials, tokens, user key, access key, something that you want to store in your app even after your app is closed. So in this tutorial we are going to learn how to use application settings to store some of the user data in your app and use it even after your app is closed and reopened again. So I don't need the previous code now, so I'm going to remove it and fix my some of my code. I don't need this, so let's just quickly add a layout and understand how application settings work. So I will simply take a stack layout and take a label. In application settings you can store any sort of data you want, but it should be in a key value pair like a dictionary. So and it's store data in string format. So if you have data in numeric or number, you have to convert it to string before storing it to application setting. So let's say I will have a label and a button. I will add a class button primary as we have done earlier. I will use a label. For that I need to define a variable. I will say counter. Counter is my variable. Let's say it is of numeric type and I want to store this counter in my application setting. So in the text field I will use this sort of text formatting so that if any of the changes will occur to my counter variable will directly reflect here in my text label. So now I will save it. It will show a label and a button. So now as you can see my app is refreshing multiple times. So now as you can see I can see 0 as my counter value and my button. So let's give my button a name as increment by 1. So what I am going to do in this tutorial, I am going to increment the value of my counter by 1, and then by closing the app I will see whether the value I have incremented in my variable is stored or not. So for that I will have a tap event that will call a function increment value. I will enclose it here. Now I will add quickly some style to my text such as color as white, text align center. I want my text to be displayed at the center. Font size as 24 and I will give some padding so that it doesn't collapse with the button as 10. So now let's just save it. We will see how my UI is looking later. Let's add my function here, increment value. In this function, what I will do is I will increment my counter variable by a number 1. So now my counter is increased. Let's say whether it's increasing it or not. Now my background is already white. I will keep it as black. So now as you can see, I have a button and I have a label with value 0. So if I will click on increment by 1, it will show 1. So now what will happen if I will close my app now? So let's close my app and reopen it again. So now you can see, as I haven't used application setting now, and my value which I have incremented by 1 is not stored. If I will click on it again, it will again increment it to 1. So now let's quickly add application settings in my application. I will type it as import all as app setting from application settings. So now I have taken a variable with alias as app settings. Now I will do a prior check. In this case, if app settings dot get string is the method of taking a value after you have stored it in your application settings. I will explain it here why I am doing this. So I will write the case later. First, as soon as I will increment my value by 1, I will store this value in my application settings with set string. Now in set string you have to see here, as you can see, there is this, my VS code is showing you need a key and you need a value to be put here. So I will store my value with a variable counter here. Now as you can see, this dot counter variable of mine is of type number. So what I will do is I will simply append this and store it in my application setting. So in this way I can store my numeric value to my application setting. So now my, whenever I will click on increment value, my value that is being incremented will also store in application setting with a variable name counter. So now I will do a prior check. In this case, as soon as the app load in the constructor section, my app setting will check for a variable name counter in it. If it is undefined, that is if it is not stored before, then I will change my counter value to whatever I have stored in my application setting. So for that you have to use app setting dot get string and counter. So now earlier my value is 0. If I have any value in my application setting, it will be stored to the this dot counter variable. So now let's just save it and use it. Now my app is refreshed. So now as you can see, my value is 0 here. If I will click on increment by 1, so now my value is incremented by 1. Let's close my app. My app is closed. Now I'm going to relaunch it again. Now as you can see, my incremented value is shown here by default, which is actually 0 in the first case. Let's increment it by 1 again. Now close it again. So now in this case it will show 2 by default there. So now as you can see, I have stored my data in my application setting successfully. So now in case of you want to delete any of the stored data, so how you are going to do this is, let's say I will add a button quickly here. I will say it as delete and delete value. Now I will call the function here. For this thing you will type app settings dot remove. You are going to remove that key value pair with your key. Here in this case my key is counter. So if I will click on this button, it will remove the value associated with this key, that is counter. So let's save it, save my HTML part also. So now as you can see, my value is already 2 by default. So if I will click on delete, now the value of my counter variable that is stored in my application setting is deleted. So but it is not reflected here because I haven't made changes to my the value that is stored here in this counter variable. So what will happen if I will close my app and relaunch it again? So now as you can see, I have incremented my value by 1, and then I have showed you a way how to clear your application setting data with removal of the key. So if you want to remove all of your keys from application setting, you can use app settings dot clear method also. It will remove all of your keys stored in application settings. I'm not going to use here, just for the information. So in this way you can use your application settings in your app to store your user data and use it after, even after closing of your app. So that's all for tutorial. Thank you.